Welcome everybody to the 2021 Black and Brown Birthing Summit. We're so excited to have you here today to hear from so many different educators, scholars, laymen, community healthcare workers who have been doing this work for so long. We are trying to change the narrative to help our young people see and understand the importance of elders, the importance of where we came from in the birthing process, to understand what is needed and understand the spirit of the baby before it enters this world. We have the men who are talking and enjoying this discussion. We have the women. We have everybody. Please enjoy.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's an honor and a privilege to be here for you today and to be able to talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart and one of the tools that I believe improves the health of our community and improves the health of our black and brown babies, and that's breastfeeding. We know that breastfed infants are healthier. They have less ear infections. They have less general illnesses, and they also are going to be considered to be smarter infants. Part of that is the engagement of their mothers with them when they're breastfeeding. They're touching them, they're talking to them, they're moving them from side to side on the breast, which engages both parts of their brains, and that helps our infants to be healthier. They're going to have less risk of becoming overweight or obese, higher IQs. They're going to have less gastrointestinal problems, and they're going to be protected against major bowel diseases such as maternal wise. The health benefits to a mother is really important because it protects women from female cancers when they breastfeed. It's going to help to space their children, decrease their estrogen, and that's going to give them a protective factor against uterine, ovarian, as well as breast cancer. It's also going to give women a decreased risk for osteoporosis, which is bone thinning. So if there's many benefits to that mother, along with the ability for her to recover from childbirth faster. She's going to lose weight more than mothers who don't breastfeed. Her uterus is going to shrink to a pre-pregnancy state at a much faster rate, and she's going to have less blood loss after delivery. Health disparities as it relates to the burden of chronic disease. We know that African Americans carry the burden of higher rates of diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease. We consider those who have diabetes to already have heart disease. So it really is important to prevent these diseases if possible. And we know that breastfeeding our children is a pay forward kind of a thing. So when children are breastfed, it helps to protect not their health just as infants, but their future health. I promote breastfeeding because breastfeeding is important to address the health disparities in the African American community. It helps to decrease the burden of chronic disease in our community. It helps us to bond and nurture with our children. It protects not only their health as infants, but it also pays forward and protects their future health, as well as our health as women by protecting or preventing us from having female cancer. So I think it's just important because of our risk factors for certain diseases that it's an important tool to help prevent that, as well as to raise healthy children and families.
The mortality rate is the same today as it was 20 years ago. And you heard about all the work we're doing. You heard about all the organizations that have come together. There was no doula program 10 years ago, but we found out midwifery. We've had midwifery. Dr. Moore's talked about midwifery ever since I've known her, and I've known her a long time. And finally, we have someone that can actually do an education so we can teach more to be that. But one of the problems is we don't have young people that want to go into midwifery. We don't have young people who want to go into medicine or health.
working, going to the clinics, asking the right questions of the health care providers, providing for the, make sure that the clients are getting adequate care. We have clients who are going to get care, but they're inadequate. And I think we need to address that as a primary. So I think insurance companies want to do something. If they're seeing that the stats are still not improving, then look at what's going on in the clinics. Why the patients are not keep getting healthier? Why are we still consistently having higher rates in maternal mortality or across the board? People, African American, dying from blood diabetes, strokes, heart condition. Health has always been the same with the poverty, housing problems, transportation, the whole thing involved with the social determinant health has been there. We know the results of that and what's happening with families. What we have to do is we already know that information. We need to put in another change agent in helping moms and improving health. So what it has for me is needs to be training for the healthcare providers who are caring for our population. Need to be aware of the implicit biases when they're working with people of color. We also need to have advocates, as I mentioned before, community health workers working with families to help them navigate through the system. And I think those are key things that can be added into this dynamic or equation to help make changes in the health disparities in patients of color, people of color.
That, for real though, God is good.
All the time.
All the time.
He is good.
Yep.
I didn't know that then. How does that baby live? What is it that is in that child's nature? What is it that is in the parent's nature, both parents' nature? What is it that gives many of us the capacity to live? So the Cultural Wellness Center came into existence because the people we spoke to about this question of why our babies live really described something as the major problem as well as the major solution. So the problem was identified as I talked to people. This particular problem that we now call the people's theory, many elders, and I do mean this, elders from and within our community of African people, but elders in other cultural communities also. And what they said is, when you look at it, you'll see a downward spiraling process that has happened over these centuries of being under the conditions of this severe traumatic terror that we live under. A downward spiraling process began where people were forced into individualism, loss of our culture, not just loss of culture, but destruction of culture, stripping of culture. Community was destroyed. Community, which is intrinsic to our health, for people of African heritage, was destroyed. Ground that we stand on earlier, as I mentioned, this idea of a philosophy of community, not a geographic community. In the case of people of African heritage, we have been disconnected, stripped, as we know, from what is a geographic community. Our identity, through this process of enslavement, through this process of being tackled at our very nature and spirit, keeps us wondering if we have a land. Is there a land that we belong to? And the point is, guess what? We have a land, a creative natural land that was put in place by the Creator, cannot be destroyed. And you'll hear that in our Christian as well as our Islamic work that we do. The world didn't give it to us, and the world cannot take it away.
Like the old saying says, it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to relearn how to orientate itself to village life when it has been destroyed. And I think that for people of African heritage specifically, that's what I think I'm responding to in terms of like why I think this practice is important. Because I want fathers in our community to realize that our responsibility is to family and community, ourselves, our family, and our community, and that the love of one it only amplifies the love of the other. The love of myself and amplifies the love that I can have for my woman, amplifies the love that I can have for my child, and amplifies the love that we as a family can transmit back into the community in order for that child and for us to do what we came here to do, which is to make our community better. So Jeremiah and I were part of the first cohort of men to be trained to doula and to support fathers in the birthing process. And so I'll just share a little bit about myself, and I think Jeremiah will do the same. Part of the reason that I became a doula for fathers is really the idea that in our training we learned about this idea of CPR, comfort, praise, and reassure. And part of the reason that's part of the reason I became a doula for fathers really is to help to support the idea that in my mind, as a father, I am actually the first level of support to my wife or my woman and the child that is coming. And in that role, I want to be the first to both care for and comfort, to praise and to reassure both. Fathering is, again, I think that fathering is probably the role that I take most serious in this life. I think I have a lot of titles and have been, think a lot about a lot of the things that I do, but as a father, it's the one position that I'm in that I know that has the capacity to impact future. So mothering is about future. And in order to kind of have future, you have to be intentional about, one, the calling that you've placed into the universe. You say to the Creator, give us a child who will, be this for us and for our people. You say to the Creator, give us this for, in order that we will have, as a people, as a family, that we will have this in our future. That, I think, is the role that the father gets to play. That's the point of the baby, to carry the knowledge forth that we know so that when we leave, what we know won't leave the planet because the planet needs that knowledge to continue itself. It's not just about making baby. So it's like, how do you support a father to say to him, I know that her moods are changing. Over the course of the 9 months, you're going to go through hell, high water, and I don't really have a way to get you out of it because y'all are in it. The baby's in high water, the mother's in high water, and brother, you are too. So how do you create the sense of internalized support that says, I want to support you so that you can be the best support for your woman and your child? That's what I think I'm attempting to do, which is not necessarily to be an active role in the birthing room, but to really affirm the role of the father, which is to reorientate. The father, in my mind, is always reorientating. So if the moon orientates you to the 28-day cycle, the sun is what reorientates you day after day, because the sun's going to come up, it's going to reorientate you to say, it's day, it's night. That is how I'm thinking about it. So that, because that's the way that we think about childbirth and the process of birthing in general, our work really then is to create that support system and to have the father be the first line of support in that birthing system.
Say hey, world. Say hey. Say hey. Hey. Yes. Remind everyone to say, drink water, eat something healthy in the morning, or in the day I should say, in the afternoon and at night. Try to exercise for 30 minutes.
There were other states that have followed suit since the House declared racism a public health crisis. We were the first in the nation to have a state legislature do that, and several states now have followed suit there. And what I think was most important about the work that we did within that House Select Committee, both myself and both Chair Moran as well, was that we created a opportunity for the voice of community to be centered and the voice of BIPOC community members to be centered in that House Select Committee on Racial Justice. And the 83 recommendations that came out of that House Select Committee, those were community recommendations.
The organizations and the entities that are back out there that no one seems to know about or can't find. or don't think about, to bring them forth, to be heard and to be seen. And I do believe the more that we can continue to do that and help people see beyond the ugliness of politics, because there is some ugliness in politics, in the practices that we see, that we have to be a part, that you have to be a part of driving that agenda and helping to reduce the disparities that we see within our healthcare arena in all its forms. Um, and I know my good friend up there, Samira, understands what I'm talking about when I talk about this whole disconnect and this ugliness about politics. But our voices as Black individuals, as Black organizations, as nonprofits, is so needed in helping us shape the outcomes that we want to see in our community, that we believe is going to transform the disparities that we see that are inundating our state.
I'm now in the United States and I have another community back home, and I work as hard as I can to support them in that role as well as to support them while I'm here. I think that as an immigrant, when I arrived here and the experience that I had with my firstborn, who was born 21 days past his due date, in which he was a 10-pounder. I'm not a very large woman, and the two of us almost died. 7 babies were born that evening at Fairview. I was the 7th woman to be helped, and the complications that happened took my firstborn across the river to the NICU, where he was there for 3 weeks. So I came home with empty arms, and it's a devastating experience. We were both young. We didn't know how to advocate for ourselves or the questions. We had a pile of books, and we thought that we knew everything about birthing. But then later on, I understood that there is a medical apartheid that's practiced when we entered into the medical system. Black women are not considered to be as human as other women.
Good afternoon. My name is Keisha Mitchell, and I am the program manager for the African American Babies Coalition. And today I experienced my first ever birth summit. This forum was so great. I didn't really know what I was going to experience coming in, but listening to the elders in our community, listening to the doulas, listening to the fathers come in and talk about their experience, having a nurturing background, and just thinking the total from before babies even thought of to a child that maybe have lost their parents. It was just such an amazing experience, and I hope that next year it would even be bigger and grander. Thank you.
I want to back up. We need to make sure that you have a lunch period. So 11:45, we're hoping everybody will go and grab their lunch if they have not already done so. And then we will have a discussion with Ms. Jenny Joseph from the JJ Way. And then we'll have just a short segment of the Women's Economic Security Act, WESA, and the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry. Then we will have a division of care and well-beings of Black, Latino, Indigenous, and African Americans, ages 0 through 7, by Marisol Chicalana.
Picture of an adult kissing a baby. And when we see the areas that are lighted up in the adult's brain, how it's reflected in the brain of that baby. So the interdependence, the relationship that exists starts from a very early age. That everything we do in terms of a loving relationship, in terms of letting the baby know you're loved, you're safe, we hold you as sacred, we hold you as important in our family, and in our world family. The baby is already perceiving, even though that baby may not be able to speak yet, may not be able to utter words or tell exactly what it is except for crying or fussing, and then we as adults are really programmed to respond to that.
How do you see making safe spaces for yourselves or your colleagues? Is there some point or time inside of your agency work or your organization work or your department where you will just stop a minute and take a breath collectively and say, whew, let's have coffee, let's get out of here, let's bring it down, it's too much. Like, do you see safety doesn't have to just be the safety that we are providing and creating for our clients that we care about. We need both safe spaces for both sides, both entities, the community that we care about and our own community. Consider yourself part of a movement. This is movement building work that we do in order to create safe spaces for our clients and our families.
Here's your opportunity to create your own history and bringing that love into the world. So eating foods that the fats are liquid are better for you, because liquid on the outside, liquid on the inside, as opposed to being solid on the outside and solid on the inside. The other thing I want to talk to you about is the other E, emotions. We live in a high technology world today, and we have to balance that high tech with high touch. Go to the dollar store, which is what I did often, and get bubbles, a fun activity you can do with your children. When you do blowing bubbles, you're forced to breathe. So if you inhale to blow the bubble, it's a breath. And it's a fun way to practice breathing. So I recommend bubbles. Reach out and care for yourself and care for others. Care for your family. Touch is very important. And last, but definitely not least, in this very brief conversation with you, is exercise. Move it. When you move your body, you feel better, and your body loves you for it. If you don't use it, you will lose it. Your body needs to be in movement.
So sometimes we think about, this is what I want to share with you. It's a lot in this list, but if we don't get to everything, maybe we can continue with the conversation at another time. But we would like to just check in some information about the economic gap and educational gap in Minnesota, the difference between formal settings and FFN care. Talk a tiny bit about the racism in childcare and the systemic racism, and identify some things that we can do together. Thanks. Next slide. So when we talk about formal and informal care, sometimes people, we assume that everyone is on the same page about it, and that is not the case many times. So just wanted to just talk with you and just remind ourselves about what do we mean about formal childcare settings. And many of you are involved or have businesses or work in formal settings. So we refer to that as centers, family childcare at home, legally on license, folks that are registered with the county, many times grandparents that are taking care of babies at home and children at home. Other programs, like for example, Head Start, that it's not a child care per se setting, but they do a lot of the care and education for our young.
For that history where all we knew was negativity and didn't have the resilience to bounce back from negative to emotion, which is really a natural way of life, because we were stuck in negativity because we were not allowed to practice, our healing ways. And so we were forced to live that way, and that's why many of our people are dying today because of that. And now that, we have our healing ways, this is what it feels like to live in historical trauma. We flee from knowledge because there is pain there. We don't understand our own pain. Maybe our coping skills and survival are self-medicating and drug addictions. We split our personality and take our mothers and ancestors on. We don't know what feelings belong to us and what does not belong to us because this has been passed down. We carry the trauma of our great-grandmothers, grandmothers, our mother and father, and our ancestors. We experience pathologies and cannot sustain school, a job, relationship, and family life. We fall deeper into a way of life that is not conducive for health, well-being, and spirituality.
Hello, my name is Nancy Bordeaux, and I am here at the Birthing Summit. And I came to be on the panel here, and the reason why this summit is important to me is because I am a doula and have been doing doula work with the Division of Indian Works. And one of the things that really is helpful for the work is to know that we as Indigenous people have historical trauma that we have to be aware of and start working with and healing with, because the pregnant mothers that we work with are Indigenous, and they also carry over 500 years of trauma on top of their current traumas that they have. And it's important to realize that if we don't take care of these traumas, what they really are is unprocessed traumas. We only experienced half of the trauma, which was the trauma itself, but we never got to experience healing and taking care of that trauma when it happened in that time, because we weren't allowed to do our healing ways, our healing traditions and rituals. So generation after generation carried this trauma, and it was passed from womb to wound, wound to womb, generationally. That's how it was passed, and today science calls that epigenetics.
As we collaborate, we give ourselves greater opportunities to make changes, and make changes that will impact the broader systems, because it's the systems and policies that are in place that continues to impact our birth outcomes. And if we're able to address those, then we can make a difference.
Has been my request ever since I started this work is that in order for us to change, we're going to have to get together and to let the system, the larger system, know what's needed in our community. And if we can work together, then we can make a difference.
20 years from now, I hope that we're not still at this same place, but we will have progressed, not just as one organization, but as a community to address birth outcomes.
And it has a clock on it, so you see the times keeps marching on, so you can look at that on every day.
Thank you.
And so really appreciate your work. So come to some kind words.
Thank you very much, Hazel, on the African American Babies Coalition. I appreciate this award and this recognition.
Hi, community. I'm Nona Ferguson, Vice President of Programs here at the Wilder Foundation. I'm excited to talk to you today about the African American Babies Coalition. So what I want to talk about specifically is the amazing conference that's being held today. It's been a 2-day experience that has talked about everything from the role of fathers in the lives of their children to really decreasing the birthing disparities that our community is experiencing. This work is not possible without the amazing leadership of Samira Bilal-Roby. Samira has a mission to transform the lives of our families and to impact them for generations to come. Here at Wilder, the African American Babies Coalition fits in perfectly. We're all about transforming lives and giving people a good start. So, to that end, I would just say the mission of the African American Babies Coalition and the Wilder Foundation really align well. Samira's work fits in with our work around transforming systems and policies as a way to get resources to the needs of those in community. She brings a strong lived experience as well as professional experience that informs this work. What I appreciate about the work that she's doing is that it's going to help us get systems aligned to really serve the needs of all the families in St. Paul and the Twin Cities. She's committed to passionate work and bringing the cultural lens to the work. She requires that systems ask themselves hard questions, but also hear the voice of communities and create a better product on behalf of the communities that they serve.
My name is Akmiri Sakara. I work for the Cultural Wellness Center, and I'm on the steering committee, I guess, for the Black Babies Birth Summit. And today's events and activities, I think it worked really, really well. Very just pleased. I think it was a different kind of energy than what I could even think I was expecting for today to be. I think it was, I just was really moved just by what people said and people's participation all the way around. And so I feel good about what's happened, and I hope that it came through virtually, that what we really wanted to do, being able to reach out to our communities about it, I hope that people can really feel that.
We're on it. We are on a mission, and I don't think anybody can stop us.